Don't have to be too formal. My goal today is to help answer questions you have about writing research papers in gerontology and to give you some tips and advice. And I'm going to help you with everything from the research process to APA style, so a wide range of things. And within an hour, we're not going to talk about everything, but we'll try to cover as much as we can. I have a couple handouts that I want to give you. And for those of you watching this across the United States on video, I will make these handouts available. So one handout is just kind of oh yeah, thank you. One handout is just going to help you go along with my presentation. It's going to be interactive, so I'm not just going to lecture to you for an hour about writing a research paper. I'll bore you to tears. And my other handout is an actual gerontology class assignment, a research assignment. I'm going to use it to just talk about writing research papers in gerontology. So to start off with, being the writing teacher that I am and the Writing Center person, I want to just tell you about one resource on campus, the Writing Center. And then I'm going to have you do just a little bit of writing, find out what questions you have about writing research papers. So here's a little postcard about the Writing Center. The basic information I'm going to tell you is all on our website, so you can use the postcard to visit the website. The website is just the CSU website /Writing Center. So it's www.csus.edu/Writing Center. The University Reading and Writing Center is a good place to go to get help with your research topics. So if you're writing a research paper and you need help understanding the assignment, you need help coming up with ideas, if you need help integrating sources or doing research, if you need help with the dreaded APA style, we can help you with any aspect. The Writing Center is a place that you can visit in one of two ways. I don't know if I mentioned it's over in 128 Calvaires, and you can visit us by just dropping in, or you can visit us by making an appointment for the whole semester. So if you have a semester where you have a lot of reading and writing, and you want to make an appointment for the whole semester, you could come by the Writing Center during week 2 or 3 of the semester. That's like our sign-in period. And you could sign up for the whole semester, up to an hour a week with the same tutor at the same time. You could also drop in. You'll see on our website that we're open 10 to 6 Monday through Thursday. So you can drop in any time within that range. But we also have drop-in only hours. And those are the hours that we only do drop-ins. We don't have any regularly scheduled students. So those are the best hours to ensure that you can see a tutor if you're dropping in. Those are 2 to 4, Monday through Thursday, and you'll see that on our website. The Writing Center is a peer tutoring center, so we have advanced undergraduate and graduate students who get a semester of training in tutoring, and that's our staff. So do you guys have any questions about the Writing Center and our services?
This is all free.
This is all free. I should have mentioned that. It's all free. Yeah. If you really like the service, you can slip me a $20 bill under the table. No, oh wait, this is going out to the internet. I shouldn't have said that. That was a joke, internet. Oh my God, I won't be here next semester. So the Writing Center was a great place to get help, but I've just been fired, so it won't be next semester. Yeah, that was a joke. No cash, it's all free. Any other questions about the Writing Center? Okay. What I'd like to start off with is a little bit of something I call a free write. A free write means I just want you to brainstorm, and I'm not going to collect this or grade it or look at your grammar. On my handout, the main handout that has my contact information, I have a box that says, what questions, oh, I have a typo, that's not good for the Writing Center person. What questions do you have, I meant to write. What questions do you have about writing research papers in gerontology? And I want you to just write down any questions you have for me that you really want answered during this workshop. Anything about writing research papers in gerontology, whether it's about APA style or organizing research papers or understanding the assignments. Do you have any questions at all? If you could write down 1 or 2 questions. Things that are going to keep you up at night if you don't get them answered in the next hour. Since we have such a small group, I'm going to force each of you to tell me one question, whether you like it or not. So that's the reward you get for coming, is I'm forcing you to do stuff. So let's start over here. Give me one question you have for the workshop.
Specific.
That's okay.
When I'm writing research papers, I sometimes have a hard time citing certain things like charts.
Okay.
I find in peer-reviewed articles.
Uh-huh. So difficult citation issues in APA style. APA is what you mostly use, right? Okay. I don't think that's such a specific question. I bet a lot of people struggle with this. I struggle with it too. I use APA style a lot in my field. And every once in a while I'll come across a kind of thing to cite that I'll just be like, man, I'm not exactly sure how to cite this. It's like a chart inside another reference, and so how do I do it? So that's a real good one. All these difficult citation issues with APA style, we'll talk about that. Go ahead over here, give me a question.
How do you cite a picture, like if you're trying to do a PowerPoint presentation?
So kind of related to that is, how would you cite images? Something like that. And I'm going to warn you ahead of time, I could have designed a workshop on APA style where I just went through APA style, but you would probably want to kill yourself by the end of that workshop. So rather than just like grinding through APA style with you folks, I'm just going to give you some resources that I think will help answer your questions. So this is like, give a person a fish and he'll eat for a day, teach that person to fish, they'll eat forever. I'm doing the, teach you how to fish, eat forever style workshop, and not just giving you a bunch of APA fishes and we're going to go through all the different types of fishes. That analogy went south real fast. How about you?
I was wondering, I have a really hard time writing conclusions for papers.
A lot of people struggle with conclusions, how to wrap up a paper, especially like a big, long research paper. Yeah, good question. You, sir.
What should a research paper include?
Okay, so what content are you talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Other questions? Yeah.
What are the basic steps to start to go about doing research?
Okay, that's kind of a process question. What steps should I be going through? And I'm going to talk to you today about the research on successful college students, like successful writers. What are their processes? So students who have success writing research papers, what process do they go through? And I'll contrast that with the students who don't do so well in research papers. What process are they usually going through? And oftentimes it's a really different process, so we'll talk about that. Any other questions you want to get to in the next 50 minutes or so? Anything off our list that's going to keep you up at night if we don't get to it? You're going to be restless, you're going to be wishing, oh, if only I would have asked Dan while he was still here. Yes?
How about this title page?
Okay, so like, what are like the format for the title page and that kind of thing?
My professor, she's really kind of anal about it.
Okay.
And she doesn't actually tell us what we're supposed to do. She just like, go out to the APA website and then she'll mark me wrong because my title is a little too low.
Okay.
Move it up before.
Okay. So one of the things I think students really get stressed out about, I was really stressed when I was an undergraduate back in the 50s. Yeah, you're going to be okay with that? Oh, it wasn't that long ago. You're supposed to say no, Dan, that's impossible. Yeah, back when I was an undergraduate, one of the things I really got stressed out about was like teachers who were really strict about APA format. And what if I was just like an inch off, or I didn't have their name here, like some teachers are more strict than others. So I want to make sure you guys feel comfortable with getting some resources for formatting. Okay, so I think in this workshop, we're going to address all of these questions in one way or another. In a limited time, we're not going to delve deep into any one of these questions. But hopefully by the end of the workshop, you'll walk away feeling confident that you have some resources for these questions. The next thing I want to do is I want to actually talk about this part of the research, the process. Then as we talk about the process, we'll also talk a little bit about writing conclusions and what content should go into the research. So these two things are going to get connected. And we'll do that in the first part of the workshop. Then all these questions about APA and formatting, we'll address those in the second half of the workshop, okay? So let's get our minds now wrapped around the process. And like I said, I want to talk about what steps do successful research writers, undergraduate research writers, and graduate research writers go through. And to kind of just get us started thinking about that, I've got an example assignment, and then I'm going to have you folks think about your own processes, and then I'm going to add some advice to what you come up with. But first, I want to start thinking about a basic process that successful research writers go through. And I've got this assignment to help us with that. So if you look at this Gerontology 102 assignment, look under E. See where it says E, issue paper? This issue paper is basically a research paper. Basically a research paper. And there's certain steps that the instructor outlines in this paper that I really want to highlight. Because some of these steps that the instructor outlines are the steps that successful writers go through in research papers. And the reason I know this is because I'm the type of nerd that on the weekend reads research about how students learn to write. That's what kind of nerd I am. My specialty area, my research area, is writing across the curriculum. That's my specialty area. So I'm always reading the research on people study all the time. How do successful college writers, what processes do they go through? How do they write? And I found this assignment, I did some searching online and found this assignment because I wanted to look at some example gerontology research assignments and get a sense of what you folks are being asked to do. And this assignment really stood out to me because it outlines some steps that I really recommend that you go through. So I'm going to talk about some of these steps just really quickly, then I'm going to have you brainstorm some more steps you could go through, and then I'm going to add to our list. So let me outline some of these. If you look at E, issue paper, there's a certain process that the teacher is asking students to go through. The first thing this teacher says, I don't know if it's she or he, the first thing this teacher says is, quickly write out the issue your paper will address. So one thing you can do in a research paper is, if you're feeling overwhelmed, like sometimes in a research paper there's just so much to write you're totally overwhelmed. And you feel like, I got to get it really well organized right from the beginning. Well, actually, the steps that successful college students go through when they're writing research papers is not to put pressure on themselves and feel like, oh, I got to nail it the first time I write it, and I got to get it all organized and all the correct citations. Actually, the research shows that the process that successful writers go through is that they do some brainstorming, like some free writing, some just brainstorming writing, real messy, sloppy, just to kind of generate and get it out. So when you're writing research papers, keep in mind this tip right here, quickly writing things out. So you can write out, for example, how I feel about this issue, or whether or not I disagree or agree with this author. And you can just write it, and it doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be beautiful, but just generating the ideas and getting it out is a good first step for research writing. How many folks already do that? Do some free writing when they start. So what do you do when you get an assignment usually in terms of that free writing? How do you handle it?
I don't know, I just write down important points that I think would be relevant to whatever subject the subject is.
Good. And when you're doing that, you don't have to worry about getting the order perfect. Like first I need to go to this point, then this point. You can do that later when you're revising. So just generate a bunch of ideas, get it all out there, kind of spit it out, and then you can come back later and you can organize it and add to it. So don't feel pressure on yourself when you're confronting these big research papers to just get it all perfect on the first draft. That's totally unrealistic. And it actually hurts you to try to do that because you're not able to generate stuff. Another thing that I wanted to highlight from this assignment was number 4. I think number 4 is so key. Number 4 in this assignment says, research the subject to fill in the missing gaps. So this teacher is saying, while you're writing and thinking about what to write about, do some research. I would go even further. I would take this teacher one step further. And I would say that experienced good college writers start doing research right from the beginning of the process, and they actually use their research to generate ideas in writing. Like they use their research as a model and as an inspiration. So there's a process that experienced writers go through that usually begin with doing some research, and then getting those ideas from the research. Is there anybody here who does research right away when you get a research paper and maybe uses the research to generate your ideas, or do you usually start writing first? What do you do usually? You do the research first? Okay. So a lot of you are already doing that technique. Yeah. And when you do the research, as you're doing it, do you take notes? Do you write down ideas? What do you do? What do you do? Okay, so when you find the articles and you start reading them, like what do? Do you keep a journal or do you take notes or how do you use the articles to give you ideas? You know what I mean? Or do you just read them? You just read them? Okay. Okay. Is there anybody who, when they're reading their research, they take any notes or do some writing? What do you do? And then Marlene.
Well, I've taken a notepad from our Word document.
Okay.
And I leave it open, and as I'm going through the article, I kind of pick out the things I find important.
Okay.
Paste them onto the software.
Okay. Good. How about you, Marlene?
Usually when I have evidence-based articles, I will highlight it
Okay.
and try to skim through the article. And then at the end, I'll copy and paste on some.
Oh, okay.
And then also make sure to put where I got it from. So if I need to go back.
Okay.
That's
Good.
the hard thing.
Good. So a lot of people see, especially undergraduate students, sometimes they see researching and reading and writing as three different things. And you only do it kind of one at a time maybe. But I would argue, and the research shows that successful college researchers tend to do all three things at once. They're reading, researching, and writing all at once. And they're using their research to generate ideas for their writing. So think about that. Now, tip number 5 on here. It says, once you have completed all of this kind of brainstorming, write a rough draft. Now, I want you to be honest with me here. I don't know if you'll be willing to be honest. How many of you, when you get a research paper assignment, write one draft? Tend to write just one draft. Like just write a draft and that's about it. Maybe you fix up some sentences, but usually you just write one draft. Okay, okay. Oh, maybe 3 out of 5. How many of you write a couple drafts where you write something and then you do some heavy revising, reorganize it, really rethink it? Good, good. How many of you do 3 or 4 drafts? Anybody? Okay. So get ready, get ready. You might not want to hear this, but here it goes. The research shows that the number one thing that separates the successful college writers from the unsuccessful college writers is how much revising they do. The less successful college writers tend to write one draft, maybe just edit a little bit, and then turn it in. The more successful college writers, especially when they're writing like a big research paper that's really complicated and has a lot going on, they'll write a rough draft. Maybe they'll put it down for a day or 2, come back to it with a fresh set of eyes. They'll revise it, change the order around, add more research, take away stuff that's not relevant. Then they'll put it down for a few more days. Then they'll revise it again. And then maybe at the very end, they'll worry about the editing part. Well, they'll play around with the sentences and make sure the grammar is good. So if you're a 1 draft person or even a 2 draft person, I would encourage you to be a 3 or 4 draft person. Because especially with research papers, it takes a lot of writing and rethinking. And in a paper that complex, it's hard to write it in just 1 draft. So that's something to think about. You guys have any comments or questions, or you want to argue with me on that point, disagree? Any thoughts? Okay. One more thing I want to highlight from this gerontology paper is on the flip side of the handout on this assignment. After all the A, B, C, D, E, F, the instructor gives one more piece of advice that I think is so good. Towards the end there, before the plagiarism stuff, the instructor says, please feel free to make an appointment with the instructor if you are having difficulty or need suggestions for a topic. How many of you regularly go visit your instructors during office hours or make appointments? I knew that none of you would. I knew it. You know how I know it? Because I am so lonely during my office hours. I cannot tell you how alone I feel. Sometimes I think, is it me? Is it my personality? Is it my Old Spice that I wear? No, I'm just kidding. I don't wear Old Spice. You do. I get very lonely during my office hours, and I always think, why don't students come to ask me questions on their papers? Like, I know they have questions, but they just never come. And maybe it's because they think, oh, if they come, Dan will think I'm dumb, or, he'll think I'm not a good student. But actually, just the opposite is true. During the few times that a student actually comes to my office, I'm just like, oh, you're such a good student. You're an amazing student. You came and asked me a question, because that's showing me that you care about the assignment, and you're really trying to do a good job on it. So one more, big tip I would have during the research process is to get in the habit of, when you have a question about your topic, when you're not sure about what content should I put in, or I'm not sure what to do in the conclusion, or how do I cite this? I think you should be really comfortable stopping by and visiting your professor during his or her office hour, or making an appointment. I know some professors are more like friendly than others, and some seem like, oh, they're way out here and I'm down here. But I'll say from a professor's point of view that most of us really appreciate it when students come by to visit us during office hours and ask questions. So please don't be shy about doing that. If you've never done that, I really recommend you doing it. The other part of that is, it's a good way to get to know your professors more, get more comfortable with them. They get to know you a little better. And I think, in education, having a good positive relationship where we get to know each other, students and teachers, is really important. So those are things to think about. So now those are some pieces of writing process advice having to do with research papers that I wanted to share with you that I saw from an assignment. But now I want to add to that. And the way I'm going to add to that is I'm going to have you work in two groups. So you two are going to be a pair, and I hope you guys like each other, but you're sitting together, so I assume you do. You don't like each other? That's okay. Pretend you like each other. And then you three are going to be a trio. And what I want you to do is I want one person to be in charge of writing down what the group says. And if you see on my handout where it says other strategies for the research writing process, who's ever the writer in the group, this is on my main handout, who's ever the writer in the group, I want the group to come up with 2, 3, or 4 more strategies for the research writing process. We talked about some strategies. We talked about doing a kind of a quick, rough draft or free writing. We talked about using the research to generate ideas. We talked about talking to your professor during the process. I want you to come up with some more things you do during the process that seem helpful to you during the research writing process. Okay? So I'll give you 5 minutes to do that, and then whoever writes down what the group says will share with us what the group came up with, and I'll add some strategies too. So take 5 minutes to do that.
Asking questions. Paraphrasing the research.
Okay, are we ready? Okay. So let me hear some more research strategies from each group. Let's do 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So let's start with this group. What's another research process strategy you came up with?
I guess outlining.
Outline, interesting. So what kind of outlining do you guys do? What do you do when you outline?
Just write like the main points
Mm-hmm.
and beginning, conclusion. I guess.
Okay. So there's a bunch of different kinds of outlining you can do. Let's talk about this. One kind of outlining is real simple, and just write a bunch of main points. Oops. I don't know why I thought I could rub that off. Main point, main point. So you can just write, the main points down to get you started. Another kind of outlining is you could do, what was the second thing you said? Like intro, middle, conclusion?
Intro, body, and conclusion.
So you can really start getting into shaping it with intro, body, and conclusion. Now, here's something to think about. If you're not exactly sure how to organize the paper, if you're feeling like, oh, I don't know how to organize this, I would use this kind of outlining, and I would just list all the main points I could, and I wouldn't put any pressure on myself on putting them in a certain order. Because if you just do this, no one's going to hold a gun to your head saying, okay, now you've written it down, you have to order it that way. You can do whatever you want, right? So once you kind of see it in front of you, oh, I got this, I got this, I got this idea, then you can start moving it around, right? It's almost like you got it on note cards and you can move it around. Or if you have it on your laptop, you can cut and paste and move stuff around. So don't be shy about moving stuff around and just brainstorming. I see a lot of students who put so much pressure on themselves during the initial stage of writing research, where they try to get their outline perfectly correct. Or they do one of those old school outlines where they do like A, B, C, or 1A, 1B, like they have these crazy outlines that are just like putting so much pressure on yourself to outline everything. So this is a good kind of like a brainstorming outline. And then you can move stuff around or maybe delete something if it doesn't look relevant. This kind of outline, I think, is good for more like a middle stage draft, when you've already got an idea what the paper is going to look like, and you can start filling this in. Are there other outlining techniques that people use besides these two techniques? Anything else from any other groups, any of you, that you use besides these two when you're doing outlines? I've got a technique that's going to blow your mind away. Are you ready? This is going to blow your mind. It's something called a reverse outline. Have you heard of that before? Oh, good. I'm glad you haven't heard it because I want to blow your mind. A reverse outline, here's the idea of a reverse outline. Some writers need to know exactly where they're going to start writing. Some writers are like that. They like to have a plan. They don't feel comfortable writing unless they have a plan. Other writers are more kind of loose and free and just want to get it all out, man, and then we'll organize it later, right? So for those second kind of writers, the ones who just want to generate stuff and don't like to do an outline to begin with, they can do something called a reverse outline. And what you do in a reverse outline is you just draft your paper. Let's pretend these are paragraphs. You just draft your paper and draft your paper. And when you get to the point where you've generated a good solid draft, and now you really want to organize it, like you feel like you need some organization help, then what you do is, after every paragraph, you write down what the point or points of the paragraph are. So the main ideas or the main points in each paragraph, you write it down right next to each paragraph. This can be done on a computer or whatever. And then what happens is you get an outline, right? Because you see all the points. So you do generate an outline, but the outline comes after you've already written. And then what you can do is you can kind of step back and say, oh, you know what? This point should really come later. Or, you know what? I've actually got two major points in this paragraph. It really should be two paragraphs. So a reverse outline is a technique you might use. Has anybody used that before? Like maybe you just didn't